How's it going, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be showing you a budget land destruction deck for Commander. I chose the God of Destiny as our commander due to its low converted mana cost, and its ability is great, allowing us to remove cards from graveyards to generate as mana, or potentially gain its life and do some damage. This deck wants to ramp into some early game land destruction spells to deprive our opponent of casting spells. We then continue to apply that pressure by playing creatures that generate effects that allow us to push our game plan even further ahead. With Stoneshaker Shaman, at the end of each player's turn, that player sacrifices an untapped land. This is really good early game if you can get this out because it forces people to actually use their mana each turn. This could also be good later in the game too, but it definitely hurts decks that rely on casting spells during other players' turns. Detritivore's power and toughness is equal to the number of land cards in all opponents' graveyards. What's even better about this card is you can suspend it, and every time it ticks down you can destroy a target non-basic land. Then Invader Parasite enters the battlefield, you get to exile a land, and whenever land enters the battlefield you get to deal 2 damage to that player. It's pretty much ideal to select a basic land for this card. Calamity is a 5 mana 6/6 with trample, and every time I deal 6 or more damage to your opponent, you get to destroy one of their lands. With Worldbreaker, every time you cast it, you exile target artifact, enchantment, or land. You can also return it back to your hand from the graveyard. And the Giant Elephant gets to destroy up to 3 target permanents. Both Orcish Settlers and Dwarven Miner are creatures that allow you to continually destroy your opponent's lands. And when Aki is put into the graveyard from play, each player sacrifices a land. If you're playing with multiple opponents, this card gets really spicy. Acidic Slime is enter the battlefield effect that allows you to destroy a target land or artifact or enchantment. And when Goblin Runebuster enters the battlefield, if you kicked it for 1 extra mana, it's a 2/1 with haste, and it also destroys a non-basic land. Both Centaur Vinecrasher and Countryside Crusher become larger as there are more lands in the graveyard. When the Centaur enters the battlefield, it comes in with +1/+1 counters equal to the number of land cards in all graveyards. This card can also be returned from the graveyard to the hand. Countryside Crusher is kind of spicy because we get to mill the top card of our library until we reveal a non-land, and we get to put that many counters on this card. The reason why this is cool is because we do have cards in the deck that allow us to get lands back from the graveyard to the battlefield. Impending Disaster is kind of dumb because for 2 mana, if there are 7 or more lands on the battlefield, we sacrifice this card and destroy all lands in play. Price of Glory is a little expensive, but the card's insane. Whenever a player taps a land for mana during another player's turn, destroy that land. This really prohibits a lot of other players from actually doing things on other players' turns. Moving on, we have cards like Wildfire, Boom Bust, and Thoughts of Ruin. These cards destroy a lot of lands. Wildfire can destroy up to 4 lands and deal 4 damage to each creature. For 6 mana, we can cast Bust and destroy all lands. And for 4 mana, Thoughts of Ruin is going to make each player sacrifice a land for each card in their hand. Winter's Grass, Stone Rain, and Violent Impact are going to destroy 1 land. These 3 cards are all quite similar, destroying target artifact, enchantment, or land. Decimate can target creatures as well, so it just makes it even more versatile. Some great tempo cards are cards like Seismic Spike, the Acid Moss, and Reap and Sow. With Seismic Spike, we can destroy a land and add 2 red to our mana pool. Acid Moss, we can destroy a land and search our library for a forest and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Reap and Sow, we can destroy a target land or put a land card onto the battlefield into play. And if we have mana for the Entwine cost, we can cast both. This land also does come in untapped, which is extra spicy. Cards like Epicenter and Tremble force our opponent to sacrifice a land. And if we have 7 or more cards in our graveyard, Epicenter will make all players sacrifice all their lands instead, which is so spicy. Pillage can destroy an artifact or a land. Also, the extra benefit if it can't be regenerated. Roiling Terrain and Molten Rain destroy a land to do some damage to our opponent. Cleansing Wildfire is a little weak, destroying a target land, but then they can search their library for a land card and put on the battlefield tapped. But this also allows us to draw a card, so this is best if we hit non-basic lands here. One of the most important things with these land destruction decks is oftentimes we need to summon the spells early in the game to deprive our opponents of the mana, because if they can start assembling pieces on their board, this deck lacks a lot of removal to do so. One of the things we need to make sure is we're hitting these ramp cards early in the game to make sure we're hitting our land destruction spells. Because if we're not hitting their lands early, this deck is not really going to be as good as it should be. These 3 elves are pretty generic in ramp decks. Cards like Arbor Elf, Wild Growth, and the Tribe Elder can also generate some extra early game mana. Ramp and Growth, Explore, and Cultivate, again just trying to get out as many lands as possible. This Goblin allows us to cast our red and green spells for 1 generic less. And whenever Rada attacks, we get to add 2 red to our mana pool. And we can also tap it to add 1 green. The double red is important because a lot of our good land destruction spells need double red. This card can also be considered for your commander, but I wanted to run the other God of Destiny just because I felt it was a little bit better. The Lumberjack is insane because for 1 mana we can cast it and then tap it the next turn and sacrifice a forest and add 3 to our mana pool. A lot of our good spells we need to cast are anywhere from 3 to 4 mana. Sure, we are sacrificing 1 forest, but the amount of value we're going to be getting out of that is a lot higher and better. Seeming Spirit Guide is going to allow us to cheat out 1 red mana. Just a nice card to have. Cards like Faithless Looting and Harmonize are going to allow us to search for the cards we actually need. Pulse of Marasa is going to allow us to get a creature land card back from the graveyard, and we get to gain some life in the process. Splendid Reclamation is going to allow us to get all of our land cards back from the graveyard. This is a great late game because a lot of times we are sacrificing a lot of our lands, and this will allow us to bring them all back. The Excavator is awesome because we're allowed to play land cards from our graveyard, and I like having Eternal Witness in a green deck because we can get any card back from the graveyard. Moving on to some other big creatures, we got Galvanoth. Every upkeep we reveal a top card of our library, we can cast that instant or sorcery for free. Every time Savage Venomoth attacks, we get 6 mana to our mana pool. And Inferno Titan's great because when it enters the battlefield or attacks, we deal 3 damage. Beast Within is super versatile, destroying any permanent. Goblin Dark Dwellers is a nice creature with menace, and we can cast any instant or sorcery 3 or less from our graveyard for free. And Anger is great because you put this in the graveyard and everything gets haste. Just running some 3 generic mana generating artifacts. Gruul Signet's good too, just to mess around with the mana pool. And Dingus Egg is pretty dumb because whenever land enters the battle from a graveyard, it deals 3 damage to that land's controller. We're running these 3 creature lands, Rage Ravine, Treetop Village, and Lair of Hydra. The Slumber Mound can be sacrificed to destroy a land, and then we create a 4/4 Troll, just a nice tempo swing. And Kessig Wolfrons can allow us to push for more damage with Trample. Dark Citadel is great because it's indestructible. Temple of Abandon can allow us to scry. And Tranquil Thicket, we can cycle it. Then we're running 15 forests and 13 lands. If you like destroying people's mana bases and making them hurt, I would definitely consider running a lot of these cards in your deck. Again, one of the important considerations with land destruction decks is the fact that you need to be able to cast your land destruction spells early in the game, or you should opt to play lesser land destruction spells and more removal. But with this deck in particular, I wanted to make sure we were hitting on turn 2 or 3 at least 1 land destruction spell and then following it up continuously. With that being said, I definitely missed out on some good cards. Let me know in the comments down below what cards I should have added. Also, if you're still watching, read the comments down below because some people are going to leave some pretty spicy cards to add to your deck. Thanks for watching, stay tuned everybody, and take care.